Okay, so picture this. Ava Antipova comes back to her family's vineyard, upstate New York. It's after her twin sister Zelda dies in this barn fire.
Sounds tragic right off the bat.
Totally. But then these weird messages start appearing, sort of hinting Zelda might actually still be around. It's a real, wait, what kind of hook.
Yeah, the premise itself is immediately intriguing. You sent over some great material on Peyton Dolan-Leach's dead letters, summaries, plot points, some pretty strong critical takes, too.
Right.
So my mission here is to really unpack this story, the twins, the family secrets, this whole maybe faked death scenario. We want to get into what makes it work and, well, maybe why it doesn't always work for everyone.
Exactly. We're diving into that central mystery, the characters who are, let's say, complex, and why the book got such different reactions. Basically, getting under the hood of Dead Letters so you can understand what makes it tick.
Okay, let's start with that core mystery, the setup. We meet Ava and Zelda Antipova, and their family background is not exactly idyllic.
No kidding.
It's this struggling vineyard near Ithaca, parents always fighting, lots of verbal abuse, apparently, and the mother dealing with alcoholism and early onset dementia. It sets a pretty dark tone from the start.
It really does. A family under serious strain. And Ava, she seems like the one who, got out, went to Paris, got a degree, a French boyfriend, developed this more like refined taste, especially for wine.
While Zelda stayed behind,
Right.
stuck managing this failing winery, taking care of their mom as her health gets worse. Quite the contrast.
Definitely. And then boom, the barn fire. Zelda's apparently dead. But Ava, she gets back and almost instantly, her gut tells her something's off.
Yeah, that official story burned alive holding a lit cigarette, it just feels a bit too neat, maybe. Almost playing into what people knew about Zelda's, self-destructive side.
Exactly. And then the messages start arriving, these cryptic notes supposedly from Zelda. That really ramps up the suspicion.
Which leads us to this really interesting narrative device, Zelda's AZ clue trail. One source called it a clever device.
Right? This alphabetical quest. Ava has to follow it to figure out what's going on. It's like Zelda is running this whole game from, well, maybe not beyond the grave. What do you think of that as a way to drive the mystery?
Well, it's fascinating because it immediately tells you something about Zelda's personality, doesn't it? Suggests she's manipulative, maybe a bit theatrical even, but it also makes you wonder, how effective is that for a grieving sister? Is it a real attempt to communicate, or is it just performance?
That's a really good point. And speaking of characters, the sources, they don't paint a rosy picture of the Antipova family. One review just straight up called them volatile and selfish alcoholics.
Yeah. Dysfunction seems to be the name of the game there.
It really does. And the relationship between Ava and Zelda, it's not your typical twin bond, apparently. We hear about fraying ties, mind games, even destructive behavior.
Makes you wonder what actually held them together, amidst all that chaos.
And Ava's choice to come back, it costs her. She leaves that stable life in Paris, the degree, the boyfriend. She steps right back into this family mess. It's mentioned she starts out pretty straight-laced.
Right.
And this whole quest forces her way out of her comfort zone. What do you think her being willing to do that says about her connection to Zelda, even with all the tension?
Well, it must suggest some kind of deep bond, right?
Yeah.
Maybe obligation or even love buried under all the resentment. Or maybe the mystery itself is just that compelling. Something strong is pulling her back in.
Then there's Wyatt. Oh, boy. He seems to have this complicated past with both sisters.
Yeah, I saw that. One reviewer called it beyond Freudian.
And icky. That was the other word used.
Yeah.
It definitely adds another layer of discomfort to the whole family dynamic.
Yeah.
What role do you think he plays?
Well, Wyatt seems to really amplify that dysfunction, those blurred lines in the family. He's like a catalyst, making the sister relationship even more tangled, highlighting all the secrets and potential betrayals. And yeah, that icky factor just adds to the generally unsettling vibe.
And the parents, they're not exactly pillars of support either, are they? The dad, Nolan, he's described as just absent. And the mom, Nadine, she's lost in dementia and alcohol, oblivious at best, according to one source. It really leaves the twins kind of adrift, navigating all this alone.
Yeah.
How does that lack of support shape things?
It creates a vacuum, really. It probably forced the twins to rely on each other, maybe in unhealthy ways, and likely fueled that complex, damaging dynamic they developed. It sort of sets the stage for all the secrets and manipulation later on.
So with all this, intense family stuff going on, What are the main themes coming through in the source? It's clearly about more than just, is Zelda alive, right?
Oh, absolutely. Beyond the mystery, it's hitting on heavy themes. Family drama, obviously, but also the destructive side of alcoholism, the impact of trauma, abuse, secrets, lies, betrayal, all that heavy stuff. And right at the center, that really complex, difficult bond between twin sisters.
Which raises that interesting point about genre. It gets marketed as mystery, thriller, maybe gothic.
Right.
But the reviews seem a bit divided on whether it actually feels like that.
That's a key thing, yeah. Several sources suggested it reads more like contemporary fiction, maybe a literary mystery. The pacing is often called a slow burn,
Okay.
more focused on the characters, the family saga, rather than just pure suspense. And that difference in expectation, it definitely seems to affect how readers react.
And that Southern Gothic feel someone mentioned, even though it's upstate New York, that's kind of striking. Maybe it's about that feeling of decay, hidden secrets, you know?
That's a sharp observation. That Southern Gothic thing might be less about geography and more about the decaying family, the maybe grotesque characters, the dark secrets buried in the past. It adds this atmospheric layer beyond just standard thriller stuff.
And how the story gets told is interesting, too. Those emails, the cryptic messages from Zelda, they're central. It's how Zelda keeps influencing things, driving Ava's search, even though she's supposedly gone. How well does that work, do you think?
It's a pretty clever technique, actually. It keeps Zelda present, controls the information Ava gets. The emails give us her voice, or at least the voice she wants Ava to hear.
Right.
And the cryptic clues create suspense, force Ava and the reader to piece things together. Keeps you guessing about Zelda's motives. Is she a victim? A puppet master?
And it's not just whole straight through, is it? The summaries talk about a nonlinear structure, flashbacks to their childhood. What do those add?
Those flashbacks are crucial, I think. They let the author slowly reveal the layers of the sisters' relationship, the roots of all the family problems. It gives you context for why they are the way they are now, makes it richer than just a straight A to B plot.
Okay, now the ending. This is where things get really divided. One summary promises a surprising conclusion.
What you'd hope for in a mystery.
Exactly. But then another reviewer called it implausible and frustratingly unfulfilling.
That's a pretty big gap. What's going on there? It probably goes back to those genre expectations again. If you wanted a neat, tidy thriller resolution, maybe a more ambiguous or character-focused ending felt unsatisfying. The implausibility could be about plot twists feeling, I don't know, a bit too convenient or out of character.
And this whole idea of Zelda pulling strings, manipulating people, even after she's dead, some reviewers just didn't buy it.
Right.
While others were like, yeah, that sounds exactly like Zelda. It seems people have very different ideas about what Zelda was capable of.
Totally. How you see Zelda really shapes how you read her actions, before and after the fire. If you see her as this grand manipulator, the posthumous game makes sense. You see her as more flawed, maybe less capable, then the idea of her orchestrating everything feels like a stretch.
So all this leads us to the critical reception, which, yeah, it's definitely mixed. Some readers really likes the complex plot, that unique AZ treasure hunt thing Zelda sets up.
Yeah, the originality of that clue trail seems to be a plus for many. It gives a unique structure to the mystery, pushes Ava forward.
But then, a lot of people just couldn't get past the unlikable characters. That was a big hurdle. And the constant talk about drinking, it sounds like, for some, it went from being part of the setting to just annoying.
That's the challenge with unlikable characters, isn't it? The story has to give you a reason to care, even if you don't like them. If they just seem abrasive, without depth or understandable reasons, it's hard to stay invested. And yeah, if the drinking feels overdone, it can pull you out of the story.
There's also that suggestion from a few places that maybe the book would done better if it wasn't pushed so hard as a thriller, maybe marketed more as general fiction, focusing on the family drama.
That's a really interesting point about marketing. Setting the wrong expectations can definitely lead to disappointment. If you go in expecting a fast thriller and get a slow burn character study, well, you might not appreciate what is doing well.
And some felt the mystery itself wasn't, like, super compelling. One person even said the sibling rivalry felt predictable, which kind of undermines the whole suspense angle.
Yeah, if the core conflict feels too familiar or the twists don't really surprise you, the central puzzle loses some of its punch. If that twin dynamic felt like something they'd seen before, maybe the mystery didn't grab them as much.
And we saw that criticism of the ending again, disappointing, overly convenient, unlikely twists. Sounds like the wrap-up didn't quite land for everyone.
A satisfying ending is so important, especially in a mystery. If it feels rushed or illogical or relies too much on coincidence, it can sour the whole experience even if you enjoyed the journey.
But it wasn't all negative on the experience front. One reviewer said they really didn't like most of the characters, but they were still hooked by the mystery of Zelda's death.
See, that shows the power of a good central question. Sometimes just wanting to know the answer can keep you reading, even if you don't connect with the people involved.
Yeah, that morbid curiosity factor. And then on the flip side, another reader felt the ending was the emotional payoff they wanted, that it really hit home for them.
Which just shows how subjective reading is, right? What works emotionally for one person might fall completely flat for another. Depends what you're looking for.
I thought one description was really vivid, comparing reading it to looking at the remnants of a serious accident. Unsettling, but you can't look away.
That's a powerful image. It really captures that sense of morbid fascination, being drawn to something dark and maybe broken. Speaks volumes about the book's tone.
And that idea someone raised about Ava's personality starting to blur with Zelda's as the story goes on, that adds this whole layer of ambiguity, makes you question Ava as a narrator.
Oh, that's fascinating. An unreliable narrator changes everything. You start questioning if what you're reading is the real story or just Ava's version, maybe influenced by Zelda somehow, adds a whole psychological dimension.
Okay, so wrapping it all up, Dead Letters gives us this really grabby premise, the postmortem scavenger hunt, the possibly not dead twin, and it throws you right into this deeply messed up family dealing with some serious darkness.
And the big tension point seems to be at what kind of book it actually is. Is it a twisty thriller or more of a deep dive into a fractured family with a mystery sort of woven in? Yep. The mixed reactions really highlight that. And whether or not you could stomach the often unlikable characters seems key to how much you enjoyed it.
Right. So here's something really interesting for you to chew on. Think about the power of family secrets, how they just hang around and shape everything, even after someone's gone. If Zelda did set up this whole game, what does that really say about her? Her need for control, maybe even a twisted way to stay connected to Ava. And after Ava goes through all this, uncovers whatever truth is there, can she ever really escape that family legacy? Can she ever truly be free of it all? That's definitely something to think about.